This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the UK's #1 coral selling website prestigereef.co.uk and reefdork.etsy.com for all your 3D printed aquarium accessory needs. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to the Prestige Reef Dork show. Today we have a very special guest. Not only do we have the usual Ryan, no one's interested in that.
The usual.
We have Ed from Reefkeeper Moss End, from one of the best local fish shops in the UK. Ed, how are you?
That's very kind of you, Alex. Thank you very much. I'm really good. I'm really pleased to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me to both of you.
It's a pleasure. This is going to be really good fun. So we had Brian from TMC on a little while ago, and he gave us some insight into sort of how the industry runs behind the scenes and how fish are imported, all these sorts of things. And we're going to have the same kind of insight from you today in terms of how an actual local fish shop runs.
I shall do my best.
Actually, because so you guys are my local fish shop as well. You're 10 miles away from me, basically. So I'm in there every weekend, pestering, talking to Bruce. And it's one of the bigger shops. I'm sure it's not the biggest in the country. There must be others.
No, it's not the biggest shop, but one of the. No. It's on the, I don't know, the top 5% probably.
Yeah, and so we wanted to kind of start by working out how you got into the industry, and then move on to how you became to owning Reefkeeper. So how did you actually get started in the industry?
So I, as most people do, had my first fish when I was about 5, called Goldie. Went on to tropical tanks, and then ended up doing my first marine tank, I don't know, when I was 16, I think. That was my first Sunday job, was working in a fish shop. Went on to bigger reef tanks, onto like 5-foot, 6-foot reefs, and keeping seahorses and all the things you do when you're a kid and you have too much money or too much free cash to spend. Then I went off to uni, got myself a degree, and ended up working in management consultancy, and left the fish industry completely. I went straight into a normal office job, which within a few years quickly realized that an office job was not my forte. That wasn't really where I was meant to be. And I was chatting to the guys at Maiden Aquatics Binfield back, 18 years ago. Okay. And they were saying the guy that looks after their marine system was leaving. And little cogs just started to click away in my head. And I thought, I could actually do this as a job. I could actually work my hobby full time. And I went home, spoke to the wife, said I want to give up my well-paid 9-to-5 job. For, I think I was on something like 14.5 grand at the time. I'd be working weekends, all the bank holidays. She was ecstatic, and luckily she was very supportive. Followed the dreams and kind of went from there. Went from running the systems to opening up a shop a few years later. Rugby followed 8 years after that, and then we are here where we are now.
So how did that work? How do you go from working in a Maidenhead, like running the marine systems, to owning 2 of them? There must be like a story there, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it's Maidenhead's. It's a partnership. It's not. People think it's a franchise. It's not quite as. I won't go into the details of the business. You'll all get quite bored quite rapidly.
Okay.
But if you are the right mentality and a location is available where Maidenhead are looking to do a store, the opportunity might come to you to actually buy into the store and become the owner of that one. Okay. I was right time, right place, very much so, that they were looking to put a store that was only 15 minutes from my house. So it was pure by chance that it landed on my doorstep.
Okay, that's like pretty big thing that someone like there'd be hundreds of employees there, and in theory, any of them in the future could be lucky.
Yeah, 100%. Any single one could own and run shops.
That is amazing. Like the progression.
Yeah,
it's not like that normally in a normal company. I I was similar to you. I worked in an office for way too long, 14 years.
Right, you managed longer than I did.
Yes, it was a family business, so I didn't really have a choice. I had to fight to get out. But I understand what you mean by like you need to get like you have this desire to get out. So there was a big step though, and you must have a very, very supportive wife. If that's
I have a very supportive wife.
Yes. Is she listening tonight?
No, she's looking after the children at the moment, so she's probably sitting there watching a Christmas movie next door or something. A good Sunday evening activity.
So what I was going to ask you, which actually is throwing me off slightly, is would you do things differently if you know what you do now? But that's a slightly different question because you can't do things differently.
No, and I'm really happy with where I am right now. I wouldn't change a thing in my past. Anything that's good or bad has all happened, and it's collated to this one moment. And I wouldn't change a thing right now.
But has there been some really big events that you go, I've learned from that event, and I would do, like, if I was to start shop again? Oh, sorry.
Can I just want to wind back a little bit. So tonight is going to be chaos, by the way. Me and Ryan are just going to interrupt each other. I'm going to try to. Ryan, you've got a ton of you two are probably just not going to shut up, and I'll just be here doing admin, and that's fine. But I'm just thinking, actually, some people won't know what Reefkeeper is, and it's part of Maidenhead, which people in the UK will know, of course. But what is Reefkeeper, and why is it different from most of the other Maidenheads? What do you do differently?
So Reefkeeper started as a Maidenhead. It was Maidenhead Aquatics Windsor, and then as you know, Alex and Ryan, my forte is definitely the saltwater side of things. I've kept all the trops, and I've had ponds. I've done a bit of everything, but my passion is marines. And while Maidenhead, their shops generally have marines and ponds and trops. They have a little bit of everything. I wanted to be much more focused on the marine side. And Windsor quickly grew on that where we ended up doubling the size of the marines, putting in more coral trays. And I think to try and stand us out a little from the crowd I was thinking when you get like the Next Home stores, you've got Next where you go to buy your clothes, and you've got the Next Home stores where you go and buy your drawers. And we thought we'd change our name to Reefkeeper just so then people really knew that this was dedicated to Marines. It was a bit tricky to begin with because a lot of people then thought we didn't sell tropical fish, which we very much do sell a lot of tropical fish. We've got huge systems, but we just wanted to be a little bit different to the other Maidenheads.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Yeah,
go. I was just interested. So your share of you just mentioned that you do sell tropicals, and marines are your sales for marines and tropicals equal then based on that, or are they?
It depends how you would try and compare the sales, because if you're looking at revenue, our marines are massively outstripping the trops.
Okay.
If you look at quantity, it's probably quite similar, but then people come and they'll buy, I don't know, 24 cardinal tetras, and they'll buy one coral or one tang. So it's hard to say. The actual shop is split almost 50-50 marine and trops.
Okay, but so the marines do way better than the trops then, is what you said?
In terms of revenue, they do.
So
but then if you came to our shop, we've got a massive selection like L number Plex. We've got Ian who runs the trop system, and he's a real strong trop boy. And you'd think he's in the wrong shop, but we've got the systems to back up his knowledge base. So if you want catfish or Plex or African cichlids, we've got a little bit of everything really.
If you've got you do more volume with the trops because of course you don't buy one neon tetra. Do people spend? Do freshwater hobbyists spend like the average spend? Is it the same kind of money as marine?
No, it's massively different.
No, we're crazy. Yeah, okay. I just
completely different. Until you get a ex-marine customer who's gone tropical, and then their average spend is massively high again. So I don't know, like a zebra plec, £130 odd pound, £120. Most tropical buyers won't buy that. Yeah, the marine customers, they're like, oh, bargain, I'll have 4. It's different market.
So if a lot of shops at the moment are closing down their marine systems because they're not generating enough money, But you're the total opposite, where you've just said that your marines are doing really well compared to, not compared to, but they're doing better than your tropical sales.
Yeah.
So what makes you different is what I'm interested in. Why are some people finding it so difficult in the environment it is at the moment, but you're doing so well?
I think for us, it's the variety of the livestock that we have. So in both shops, there's 8 coral trays in each shop. So they're consisting of they're 30 foot long, 5 foot wide. And for that, you can stock a little bit of everything. Well, you can stock a lot of everything. So we've got everything from zoas to acros. We're not a specialist in any one field. You get some shops that are very much dedicated to the SBS, some that are far more into the single heads of zoas. We've got a little bit of everything, and the fish systems are massive. I mean, Rory up in Rugby, he's got these 8-foot trays for fish, 8 foot by about 15-inch wide, 16-inch high. And if you want a big lipstick, or you want a full-size crown angel, or heliocus that are full-size, you want 5 of them, Rory's the man to go to. He's got the space to have all these fish. While your typical shop that has marines off in a corner, they have a 5-foot coral tray and a bay of fish. And you can't have the variety to get the sales behind that to really generate. It's probably to generate the revenue that generates the interest of the owner. If you're only turning over a small amount of money, you're going to lose interest in it fairly rapidly and probably convert it onto something that you can sell guppies and platies and neons without batting an eyelid. Yeah. Anybody can set up a shop and do that. And you could easily turn your marines into fresh water and turn them into, well, revenue producers.
It's just you're like an anomaly in the industry, basically. I was shocked when you just said to me that your marines do better than your tropical, because I would not have. I know you specialize in marines, and I know you're a reef keeper, but I've never heard that before, where a shop that sells both types does better with the marines. And I just thought, well, that's something you're doing something different now.
It's unusual, but then also with all the smaller shops that are. The way the UK industry seems to be going at the moment is that the smaller shops are backing away from marines. They've got the huge increase in costs of running these things. They're horrendously expensive to set up and to run. So with all the smaller stores backing away, you're starting to find these larger hubs for marines where one store can cater to, I don't know, hour and a half drive of customers. It's a massive radius. I mean, if I think of who I actually think of competitors, and I mean this in a like Paul at AAC to Moss End. I say he's a competitor. I absolutely love Paul. We got on really, really well. But he's within an hour and a half drive of the shop. So at that point, we're sharing customers. Up in Rugby, you've got Kraken Corals. They're, again, an hour and a half away from the shop. But all the smaller stores in between have kind of, they've just lost interest in the salty side. It's a real shame. It's not everybody wants to drive for an hour to go and buy a clownfish. They want to just have something local, but they're definitely dropping.
100%. I remember the day where you could go out, and this is probably 10 years ago, and I could go to 7 shops in one day within probably an hour and a half's drive, and you would go to each one of them. Whereas, like, there are no shops. Well, there are some shops, but I have to drive an hour and a half to go to a shop, basically.
Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? That used to be me and the wife Sunday afternoon, was you'd be driving around the local marine stores.
I bet she loved that.
Well, she got to see the garden centre, so she was fine.
So what? Now, when I said to you what's different about your shop, I would like to put my input in. So I obviously came to your shop. I've been there a few times.
Yeah.
And I was there the other day, and I said to you when I was there, this is, like, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best shop that I've been to. And for me, it wasn't necessarily about the livestock. It was about the is it ambience or ambience? I'm not sure how it's pronounced, of the store. When you go in there, it is an incredibly friendly environment to go into, very welcoming. And yes, there's lots of fish. They were all very, very healthy. I didn't see a single sick fish when I was there. All the corals looked great, but I just wondered, how did you get it to that stage? And then I bumped into one of your employees, which was Bruce, who I know he's in the chat. And I asked him, well, what makes that store different? And he told me it was you. And I don't want to embarrass you on this, but he said it's how you treat everyone. And when you treat the staff well, they will do anything for you, is what he said. And they are more motivated. And that's what makes the difference. And is that something that you agree with, or is that just, I know it's about you, but is it, do you go, actually, no, there's other things that make it?
That's really kind of Bruce to say, and it's tricky to respond to that. But I've always treated all the guys that work at the shop as, there's no hierarchies in the shop. There's the boss and you're the Saturday boy. Everybody is treated in exactly the same way.
Yeah. And
they're all treated as people. So I don't know, say somebody needs to take a car for an MOT. I don't really care if they do that during work time. They need their car MOT. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit of give and take. We treat everybody well. My team are amazing. I haven't got a bad staff amongst them. One of the questions I was asked is who was my favorite staff member, which I'm not going to answer.
Yeah.
It's definitely Darren.
Yeah.
Who's my least favorite one. And yeah, you can't do that to people.
Yeah.
But they're all just brilliant. They're all hobbyists. They're all really enthused by what they do. They all love fish, whether it's they love the Africans or they love the Marines. They've got a massive respect for their customer base. They want the shop to look good. They've got self-respect over it. I'm really lucky.
It's pride in what they do is what I noticed.
They got massive pride.
Care.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what makes a difference to a shop. If the staff care, it's like that's like 95% of the way there.
You've made it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we spoke a little bit before the live stream, and you said that one of the hardest things to find is the correct staff. Why is
100%. It's finding the correct staff, the mentality of the staff that you can see that they actually do care about the industry, they care about the hobby, and they care about the livestock. But it's also, for us, finding good marine staff is one of the trickiest side of things. The marine hobby itself is not a cheap hobby to get into, and I need all my staff to be hobbyists.
Yeah.
So trying to find somebody that's got the available funds to do it as a hobby, but then is also willing to work in a vocational industry where you're not going to be paid a huge amount of money to work in a fish shop. That's the tricky balance of trying to get that. There's just too much to teach to a new staff member. If they've got no marine knowledge at all, it's very hard to get them up to speed. It's just such a broad subject to try and teach that to somebody. There's not a textbook, there's not a training manual. It's years of experience that goes into a staff member.
Yeah.
And trying to get somebody who's willing to work the hours on the wage, that's the trickier part.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to say, Alex, before
So I'm going to talk a little bit about. So I've only got like a few questions. There'll be a right time to ask them. But you talked about what makes Reefkeeper different. Sorry, and so the things that I know. First off, it's bloody massive. Like for a UK shop, like I'm sure in the States, I'm sure they're much bigger. But in the UK, we don't have many that are particularly big. No. And Reefkeeper is a good size. So you said that I think half of it is fresh and half is saltwater. Maybe I've just got like blinkers, like saltwater.
You just
blinkers.
don't look. You don't go down to the next aisle.
As soon as I get to the freshwater, I turn away. But I don't notice that. But everything's always kind of laid out. Everything's always clean. You've got rows of corals. Everything's priced up and all that sort of stuff. And you do all that sort of thing really well. There's a couple of things I wanted to ask in particular. So you obviously you import corals from Indonesia, Australia, wherever they are as well.
Yeah.
But how much kind of aquaculture do you do in the store? And is that something that you want to do more of, or is it like you have?
It's something we want to do a lot more of. We do almost no aquaculture in store currently. We'll be doing you'll frag things, you'll hill things, but actually actively growing them to frag them to harvest them.
Yeah.
It's having the space to do that in the UK is a tricky thing. When they do it out in Bali, in the seas. They've got the natural sunlight, they've got the currents, they've got the salt water, they've got everything ready to go. It is far cheaper and faster to buy things that are grown in the sea. And then also at that point, we're supporting the barley farmers, and they are essential to the industry. So, but as I say, it's something we want to do more of. Bruce has just started setting up a frag farm behind the scenes at Moss End, and it's really just going to be for SBS. It's just so you can get homegrown coloured pieces that are well based out. There's no point trying to look at euphyllias. It's pretty much most LPS. There's not much. Yeah, there's a few things like cyphastrias we'll be able to do, but really it's about getting acros based out and coloured up and healed and used to tank conditions. But we'll only do that on a small scale, really. It's not going to be, it won't be a huge game changer. It's it will be for SBS, to be fair. It just won't be on the rest of the corals.
Okay, so space is kind of the main limitation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, okay. Would you, if you could expand, would you want to do more? Is it better to do it the importing way?
It would be nice to do a good split. But like I said, the farm in Bali that we buy corals from, for every 10 corals we buy, one piece gets put back onto the reef. Okay. That only sounds like one piece, but that's 10% of corals that have been exported out of Bali into the UK at least. That's repopulating a reef. And if we went, right, we're going to do all our aquaculturing in the UK, they would suddenly stop repopulating reefs out there. There's no reason for the incentive to do that. So trying to find the balance between actually supporting the source of fish and corals, as well as supporting aquacultured corals from the UK base. It's a fine balance between the two of them.
I had no idea that happened.
Yeah,
neither did I. And I actually, obviously, I do it more than most people, so I had no idea either that was something.
Yeah, so when you're buying your box of barley SBS, there'll be 1 in 10 or a 11th piece will go back onto the reef. So I get this wrong. They're grown on the north of the island.
Yeah.
On the south of the island is where they do most of the fishing. I may have had that the wrong way around. I'm sure it's north to south. They used to also do a lot of dynamiting for concrete, and so when you go down to the reef from the south, there's a lot of barren space.
Yeah.
So we work closely with a charity called Linny, and they're helping rebuild the reefs back down in the south, and helping move the corals from the northern farms down to the south and getting the reefs back to where they need to be.
I'm surprised that this isn't more widely known. Why is
it? Should be shouted out. It should be shouted out a lot.
Yeah. Because the customers, like, it's just one of those things where by buying this, you are actually making a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
The world, but this is the first time I've ever heard of that.
Yeah. There's also someone's paying for that, aren't they? Either you or the barley guys or both or whatever.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So you're paying for it, and
so you should know what kind of good you're doing. You're bringing the life back to the reefs where they are back in the late 80s, 90s. Everything got turned into dynamite, and there is just, I've snorkeled over them, and it's just flat. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
So what the Linny Foundation is, they're getting local guys to build these giant concrete structures. They're like big domes with holes in it for fish to hide in. They're getting dropped into the sea, and then the farms, it's generally corals that when they grow in the farms, they grow quick. And sometimes once they grow past, I don't know, a good fist size, they'll either need to be fragged because they're too big to ship, or if they can't frag them well, they get put onto this. It's basically a big pile of acros at the end of the farm, and it's just a big dumping ground of corals waiting to be boxed up and collected, and then moved down and trapped back onto the reef again and bring the reefs back to life. It's fantastic work they do. It's really interesting if you go out there.
It is. It's just there's a lot of people that are working against the industry. Whereas we're actually making a difference in some parts of the world, but people just don't know about it.
No,
so
they've got no.
I've literally written down the name of the foundation so I can look into it after the live stream, just because I'm interested.
Yeah, no, definitely look up Linny. They're really good guys.
And what you're also saying is that if I buy a coral, I'm effectively a conservationist because I'm helping.
100%.
So I need to buy more corals to help the planet, basically.
Yes.
Interesting.
Man of the people.
Exactly. Yeah. I also wanted to say you talked about you've been scuba diving and snorkeling, that sort of stuff. Have you done much of that out in Bali and all those sorts of places?
I've only done it. I've only done some snorkeling in Bali where the the reefs have been rebuilt.
Okay.
I had when I was out there, I was snorkeling with one of the fishermen, and I heard you talk to Brian about using cyanide and cyanide fishing.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing back in the 80s. It's now illegal everywhere, so it doesn't happen. I was still fairly sure they would use some kind of trick to catch fish. You're at a depth of 8 meters. You can see fish down there, and you think, how do you possibly catch those with a net? So I was with a fisherman, and he had 2 nets in his pocket. And I said to him, if you actually genuinely net catch, there's a pajama rest down there. I can see it swimming amongst the rocks. I want that pajama rest. And he took a deep breath of air, swam down about 8 meters, pulled out his nets, wiggled around a little bit, came back up with a little pajama rest in the net. I was like, I don't know how the hell I can't catch them in an 18-inch tank with no rock in it.
Yeah.
And you're out there doing this on a day. They live and breathe it. It's in their blood to be able to do these things. It was fascinating to actually see right at the start of the industry where it all begins, and there's no cyanide, pure net catch is phenomenal to it.
Now,
but I digress away from diving. Sorry.
What I was going to say, for anyone who's listening to this, who wants to see what Ed is currently describing, if you type in catching wild fish, wild marine fish onto YouTube, there are videos of people doing this.
Yeah.
And I was exactly the same as you, where I'm just thinking, like, how is this possible? Because I can't catch a fish in a tank that's got rock in it, let alone a fish
I'm standing on ground.
Yeah, it's insane the skill that these people have, and they use these massive nets sometimes. Well, you obviously did a hand caught one, but I've seen them with big nets where they surround the rock, and then they get the fish out that way as well. But yeah, it's well worth googling just for as part of to know where your fish comes from is actually interesting.
Yeah, and you should know where they come from. You should know how they're handled. You should see the facilities they go through, and you should also see the industry that's been supported through us buying their fish.
Yeah,
it's TMC used to do a presentation called From Reef to Retail.
Yeah. I've seen it. I remember.
Yeah, I'm sure we've seen it many times.
Yeah. It's because what I always say to people is the fish goes through a lot to get to us, and knowing that, I actually think makes people work harder with their tanks, and they try to do everything they can to keep them alive. There was an amazing book by Bob Fenner called The Conscientious Marine Aquarist.
Brilliant book.
That changed my perception of. I read it a long time ago. I must have I got a different cover on my one, but that really turned me from someone who was sort of dabbling in the hobby into a real enthusiast that would do absolutely anything to get the fish what they needed. I was described the other day where I have a fish that wasn't eating, and I fed it like my freezer's full of all this different food that it just won't eat. It was a golden angel fish. But that's not the mentality of everyone. So if there's one thing that I believe that everyone should do, is they should all read that book before they get into the hobby.
Yeah, I agree.
But it makes a massive difference. So
100%.
Do you want to go back onto the shop, Alex, or would you like to? No, I'm being good tonight. I'm asking how you'd like the show to progress.
I'm going to change tack for just 1 second, because my football team is actually playing tonight 7 to 9 o'clock, same time as we're doing. Okay. And I made the mistake of checking the score a minute ago.
Well, don't tell anyone, because if they want to, because you're about to ruin it for them as well.
I am no longer a Southampton fan.
Football supporting Fishkeeper here.
Yeah,
that's true. I don't support it.
They don't normally go hand to hand.
No, I'm going to sulk for about half an hour, Ryan. So I did actually want to ask. There was one other question I wanted to ask, which was about fish. So me and Ryan have dived into the world of quarantining fish recently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pain in the arse.
Yeah,
I don't like doing it. It's a lot of effort. It's difficult. It's easy to get wrong, and you can still have problems. And you can, even once you've quarantined them, you can still have disease and millions of issues. But one of the things that I've seen, because we've made a couple of videos where we talked about it, and every time someone will say, "Why don't local fish shops do this?" or "I wish they'd do this," or something. So I mean, I know why you don't do it, because it's harder work for me to do one.
Yeah.
But why is that? Because people always think, and actually, because everybody always says, no, I know it's expensive, I know it's time consuming, but I would pay extra money. I'd pay an extra 10, 20, 30 quid, whatever. So why don't shops offer quarantined fish?
It's a lack of space and a lack of stability in the systems. So it also comes down to what you mean by the word quarantine. I've seen some stores that have said we quarantine everything because they are in the shop for 3 days before they sell them. And that's not quarantine. To me, quarantine is they are in an isolated tank for 12 weeks. There's nothing coming in or out of that fish tank for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
At that point, in my eyes, you've got as close to 99% success rate, you are quarantined. So that'd mean we would have to have every single fish, and bear in mind we get, I don't know, 12 boxes of fish come in a week, maybe 14, depends how much Bruce has been spending on my money. And we would have to have a tank set up, not for every fish, but we'd have to have a tank set up for, say, every 3 fish. And they can't be part of our systems are all interconnected to some degree, where we've got huge filtrations, we've got big skimmers, big UVs, and they're running banks of systems. To be quarantined, they'd all have to be individually filtered tanks. To do that, I would need to have a shop that's probably 6 times the size I've got just to run the quarantine side.
Yeah.
So I could process fish coming through. So the end result, if I did it, I would love to be able to say every fish was quarantined that came out of a shop, it'd be fantastic. You would be looking at a lot more than £10 per fish. And from past experience, price is such a sensitive issue with fish that if you put £10-15 that it's fully quarantined, the majority of people would just want the fish that isn't quarantined and choose to quarantine it themselves if they wanted to. So commercially, it just doesn't work. And it's a lot of work to do at home, but it's not impossible. So if you were to buy a fish and you want to quarantine it, you can do it at home in a, I don't know, 100, 150 litre tank, depending on the fish. It shouldn't be a huge amount. And that's where we'd encourage customers to take the responsibility of the livestock on their own shoulders and decide how they want to handle them. I think that's a key point for shops, is that it's the shop's responsibility to sell what looks like a very clean fish that's feeding well, that's swimming around and active and behaving normally. The phrase I use there, it looks like a very clean fish. It's not really the shop's responsibility to guarantee you have a clean fish. They can do all they can to treat a fish correctly. They can put it through all the treatment protocols and make sure they're well rested. At the end of the day, that's a fish that somebody chooses to buy, and then what they do with that fish is very much on their shoulders. Me, for one, I never quarantined anything going into my reef tanks. It was too much work. I'd have failure rates in the quarantine tank that I wouldn't have had if they went into the reef tank.
Totally. Yeah.
That is exactly that is exactly what I found. It happened the other day with a flame angel. Now, flame angels are slightly sensitive to copper anyway.
Yeah.
But it really knocked me, because I thought to myself, I took a perfectly healthy fish and I made it sick by whereas if I had put it into the system, it would still be alive because it died, unfortunately. And that's the other thing that I don't see why shops would do it, because there's too much risk involved.
There's a huge amount of risk in it.
Yeah, and then it would make you, as I said, if you would lose more fish from quarantine than not quarantine. I believe it. You might disagree with me, but I
believe with you. However, my commercial hat on, as a shop, I recommend somebody quarantines.
100%.
I can't guarantee that the fish that you're buying, I could have had the fish in the shop for 6 months. It could have come from, Alex could have brought that fish in 6 months ago. It's been in his tank for 3 years.
Yeah.
But it's going through hands. So I can't guarantee what that fish is at this point. So if you're at all worried, quarantine. But I personally, I wouldn't. I'd just take the risk on. I'm happy to take the risk of a non-quarantine fish over quarantining for most cases. Not all cases, but most cases.
Do you? So you said you use UV. Do you do any treatments at all in the tank?
Yeah. So we run background levels of copper in all of our fish systems. They get fluked and dewormed once a week. We've got big UVs on there. We don't run hypersalinities. We run at a normal salinity. I tend to find the fish react. If you're in hypersalinity and then you bring them out too rapidly, they're not going to be happy fish.
Out of interest, and then, what is the background? Sorry, I wonder what the background level of copper is that you're running.
So we're normally running at about 1.5 ppm.
Okay.
But we can ramp that up if we need to, but we shouldn't need to. Not with all the UV we've got as well.
Because recommended, it's like, I feel like the recommended dose is too harsh for the fish.
It's almost a bit like chemotherapy. It starts to cause more damage than it's actually curing.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted.
And if you've got rested fish that aren't under stress with poor water chemistry and they're being fed regularly, that's 90% of your battles kind of ticked off.
Yeah.
Not all your battles, but a big chunk of them.
Do you feel that customers have unrealistic expectations these days? Because when I first started 17 years ago, there was no quarantine. No one quarantined. It was just you put the fish in and that was it. Whereas now people sort of know a bit more, expect a bit more. So if a fish comes from you and it's not, and there's a problem in their tank, are customers are they different than they used to be now? Do they have higher expectations? I agree with you. You cannot tell if a fish is sick. It is literally like 99% of the time you can look at a fish and you go, and if it's a clean fish and you go, yeah, that looks fine, and it is fine, and then maybe it's not 99%, and then occasionally you'll get one that looks clean and it's not. But that, I agree with you. That has nothing to do with the shop. That is just bad luck, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't. Do customers have a? I would say 90% of customers are fully understanding of. They understand the protocols you go through. They understand the systems. 5-10% of customers are they. We're dealing with pets. We're dealing with live animals. It's quite an emotional topic. We're not dealing with a TV that's failed or a toaster that's blown its fuse.
Yeah.
And that emotion can come through people. And sometimes it can come through in a bit of a, I'm going to say a negative way. I'm trying to keep my politician hat on here.
No.
And you can sometimes get the feeling that it's not the fish that the shop sold me. It's very much that fish that you sold me has caused this problem.
Yeah.
And often you can't even remember the customer. And you think you've got all this blame suddenly coming at you. You think, well, really, you should know better. You've been doing this. This isn't your first tropical tank where you've got 60 litres and you're stocking it with guppies. That customer, I understand. They don't really... We can talk through this situation. The marine customers, I think you should know a little bit. You should be a bit more.
Do you find marine customers are a bit more experienced because they're a bit more hardcore then, or?
Yeah, normally they've got far more experience.
Yeah. Okay.
The customers some of my favorite customers, but the hardest customers are the My First Aquarium customers.
Okay.
And they just want goldfish in a box in the corner of their room.
Yeah.
And teaching them about the water cycles without making it too scary, without making it too complicated. We want these to be successful fish keepers. We want them to succeed at neons and guppies and platies, because in 10 years' time, they'll be buying their first reef tank. They are the future of the industry. They're probably the hardest customers we have, because we just want them to be educated correctly without scaring them off.
Do you think there would be, you might say notice because obviously you're interacting with a customer, but would it not be easier for a shop to say, look, this is what you need to learn. This is a leaflet or a YouTube video or anything, if you see what I mean, to go, we have lots of other stuff to be doing. You understand what I'm saying? Like you can't spend half an hour teaching someone the entirety of how to keep a goldfish.
So we've got the leaflets in store. We've got access to videos. We've got Maidenhead did a fantastic system for schools where there's an 8-week program where we got them fish tanks, and we taught all the kids every single week. You watch this YouTube video we produced of what the tank will go through for 8 weeks. It's a fantastic learning resource. Yeah, that is all easily accessible by customers. Yeah, but for me, that half hour is kind of key in getting a cornerstone in the industry. I'll have the same nitrogen cycle conversations, how to clean out a filter in old tank water and not under tap, and how to use dechlorinators. I've had it more times than you can count, and I'll still happily do it 6 times tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is
But
really
that's why a local fish shops are so important, and that's why it's where everybody gets into the hobby, because it's all well and good. You can go online and you can watch videos and read articles and all that sort of stuff, and they're great, but it's not the same as actually talking to someone and hearing, because they'll say something slightly differently, and you'll be like, oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, and going back and forwards, and you can ask your stupid questions without feeling like because you're not going to get judged and all these sorts of things. So there's just so much value in that. And so the first place I went to it no longer exists. Tropical Paradise, it was in East.
I remember that
place.
Yeah.
There was a guy called Cam. You'll know Cam. He's an OG. I can't remember his surname. But he spent hours talking to me. I went in on a day off, so on a random day when it was quiet. He must have spent 3 or 4 hours just talking to me. He was so passionate about it, and that there's just no way. I'd been researching online for ages, but that was like, that connection was like, this is amazing, and that's the difference between like a just researching it online or whatever, and actually going in and speaking to someone. It just made the world of difference. And so Brian at TMC is talking about doing an LFS thing where he's kind of promoting your LFS. Support your LFS, and so I think that's coming soon. But so like, how do you kind of see the role of the LFS in as important for the hobby?
It's without doubt the future of the hobby. Without the LFS, the hobby has only got so long to live. It's the accessibility of equipment if something goes wrong at the weekend. It's the entry point to the starter fish tanks. It's the exposure to fish before you've even got a fish tank. It's the exposure to seeing these animals, not seeing them in a public aquarium, not seeing them in the sea. You're seeing them in tanks that is perfectly achievable at home, and seeing that as whether you're a 5-year-old and mesmerized by cleaner shrimp, or seeing guppies as a 30-year-old and thinking, this is something that floats my boat, I could get into this. And without people entering the hobby, there is only so long the hobby can exist without the LFS. You've got some people there's some dodgy coral sellers online. I know of one in front of me at the moment. And
about Alex.
Yeah, Alex. And Ryan will continue selling corals online, and you do a phenomenal job at it. Your corals are lovely. They're well priced. But without people entering the industry, you've got there's an end date for all online sellers.
I agree.
Whether it's fish or dry goods, and it's the world these days is about online. Everything is about, I can just order it through Amazon, or I can order it. It's just a pop up on my phone. I can just order it. It's trying to change that mentality for the public that, yes, you can buy your dechlorinator online and it will be on your doorstep tomorrow. If you can wait till the weekend, go down, support your LFS that are there to help you and assist you in times of need. Well, if you contact them between the opening hours anyway. Or if your heater fails, you need to have that access point, that information, that security blanket there for you. I could start ranting and rambling about this. I can hear myself going off topic quite rapidly, but
I always feel bad. So there are times when I come into the shop or go into any shop and someone doesn't have it in stock, and I either want or need it within a too short a space of time, and I'm like, oh, don't worry, you can order it. Oh, don't worry, I'll just get it online. I always feel like I'm like, shouldn't be saying that. I shouldn't be admitting that. But
yeah, but a good shop also knows that it's happening. Or a wise man knows it's happening. If you said that nobody's buying on anything online, you'd be stupid. If you believed every customer only ever shops in your shop, only buys corals and fish from your shop, again, you're a bit of an idiot. People shop around. They like convenience. They have the necessity of convenience. Often they can't get to you. It's fine to be buying online, but where you can do, especially if you're in store and then you choose to go online, that's always a worry. If it's not in stock, that's different. But if it's, I don't know, £2 cheaper online rather than in store, that's where I get worried. If somebody's then actively choosing the convenience of online when they're in store using our advice, that grates on me somewhat.
Yeah, it must be infuriating that when that happens, when you spend a period of time talking to someone and you go, look, this is what you need for your problem, and for them to not buy it from you, because you must know in your head that person has just taken the information that they need. They know what they need, and they didn't buy it. So why didn't they buy it? They must be buying it somewhere else.
They're buying online somewhere.
Yeah,
it's the hardest part of the industry right now.
Yeah.
But actually, we get them. It happens. In fairness, face to face, it does happen. It happened to me 2 days ago. But it happens more on the phone, where you have somebody phone up looking for advice, and I don't know, Bruce spends. Bruce, he probably spent about 4 hours on the phone with one person talking about nothing. But he'll run through an entire ICP result, working out exactly what you both do ICPs, and you get the results, and you get told 20 different elements you need to dose. It's going to be a good £200-300 worth of elements.
Yeah.
You come to the shop and you go, actually, you don't really need to dose that. That's only a tiny bit low. Don't worry about it. Water change will fix that. You want to get this element, and that element.
Yeah.
When it's on the phone, you can then hear somebody tapping away on a keyboard, and then they go, "Oh, thanks for that," and they hang up. And you're like, just save you like 160 quid, and you've just ordered it online.
Yeah. For every customer like that, they must. So the place I talked about, Tropical Paradise, Cam spent hours with me, and I then the week later I spent £1,000 on my first setup, and I was, until that place shut down, I was there all the time. And so you must still get, maybe it's a 1 in 10 or something, but for every 9 customers that you get that don't do that, that investment pays off.
100%.
You must get, yeah.
Yeah, it also doesn't matter to me if I don't know, you come in tomorrow and you say, Ed, I've bought this filter, I bought it secondhand, or I bought it online, and I'm really not sure how this works. It's not working right. It's not clipping together right. I'm going to invest as much time in the helping you get that filter back up and running as if you had bought it from me, because then next time you go to buy a filter, you might think, actually, I'll buy it from Ed. Or you're going to come down to the shop and you'll buy some dechlorinator or fish, or you'll buy whatever you need at the same time. So you always invest in every customer. You try and treat them all exactly the same, no matter where their source of equipment's come from. You can just sometimes grate a little bit on that 1 in 10.
I can see you've got a question, Ryan. I'm going to be very unprofessional. I'm going to nip to the bathroom. So I'm going to leave you guys to it.
When you said that, I've lost what my question was going to be. I'm learning a lot. It's interesting because sometimes you speak to, whether in person or during the live, so I don't learn a lot from Alex, if I'm honest. But
no, that's fair enough.
You really learn the struggles. If someone wanted to do this, to start a shop, would you advise against it? I'm just intrigued. Let's say they're going to start a shop in another country. So
I don't know. It's probably easier to think they were going to start the shop in this country.
Okay.
Would I against it? I absolutely not. This is going to be the best job you've ever done.
Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely love my job. I love the people I work with. I love the customers. I love every aspect of my job.
Yeah.
Nearly every aspect, not all aspects. Nearly every aspect.
Yeah.
Would I set up a shop right now? I would be inclined to not do it this immediate moment.
Yeah. I
think with the way that electricities are, the way that rates keep changing, the way that the government is changing, I don't know, the taxes on everything. It's such an expensive time to set up a business.
Yeah.
And I think in a couple of years' time, that will hopefully ease off, or at least be stable. If we've got some stability, we'll at least know where you are. But right now, the whole of not just the fish industry, it's just industries in general, I would be reluctant to set up one now.
Okay.
At this moment in time.
Don't worry, I wasn't asking for myself.
I know what question you've just asked. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wrote down earlier. I'm just interested because, like, I said this to you earlier, and I don't know if I'm going to say this in the right way, and I'm known for offending people. So, like, I feel that there are some that people do when they start a shop is they go, I have a marine tank. I want to leave my job. I think I can turn this into a business.
Yeah.
And I think the reality of that is not real, because I think you have to have a business sense to do that as well. I think it's a lot harder to run a shop than running a marine tank. Would you agree?
It's a completely different beast.
Yes, and that was why I was going to ask. That was why I was asking. Would you advise someone to start a shop? Because the first thing I would say to them is, are you a hobbyist that wants a change of lifestyle, or are you actually a business person that's going to give this a proper go? So
yeah, and that working out what your answer to that is the key to it. The majority of shops set up because they're hobbyists. They want, and they did what I want to do.
yeah,
I wanted to give up my office job and work with marine fish all day long, and it worked out very well for me. I did that 17 years ago. It was a bit of a different time back then, where things, the costs involved in it weren't nearly as great as they are now. But the cost of setting up a shop, even just buying the equipment, I remember when I set up my first shop, I had an invoice in my hand for plastic pipe. So that's plastic pipe, taps, elbows, and I had a £25,000 invoice in my hand. And I had nothing electric. I just had plastic.
yeah.
And if I think of what that would cost these days, it's probably double, 2.5 times the amount.
I was shocked by the cost of pipe when I built.
Yeah, it's eye-watering.
I was like, how is this a thing?
Yeah, how does a tap cost like 50 quid? Are you joking?
Some of my taps were like 80.
Yeah,
like the really big pipe work.
And you need one of those in front of and behind the pump in case it fails, or you need to clean it. It's scary, the cost of everything at the moment. So I'd be, going back to the question, I'd be reluctant to do one right now. Everybody's situation is different.
Okay.
So I think
be in the perfect position to do it and run with it. You'll have a great time.
I think your question probably is related to the question I'm about to ask, but tell me if you've asked it this way as well.
I did have one question I wanted to ask just quickly because I just remembered it. Like, you know how we were talking about the support your local fish shop?
Mm-hmm.
Is it purely a change of mentality to the public? Or is there where you're saying, look, can you help basically because we support you in this thing, so you should support us? Or is there anything that the shops can do themselves from your point of view? Or because changing the mentality of the public is very hard. That is going to be a very, very tough uphill battle, I feel anyway, because people are so used to just sitting on their sofa going, yep, I'll buy that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I can only speak for my shops.
Yeah.
But being accessible, being warm, being a friendly environment, being somewhere I want our shops we're a bit of a social scene as well. It's not, you don't just go to the shop to buy a fish. You go to the shop to talk about
have a chat.
Yeah. You can be talking about deaths and marriages and births and tax returns. You chat about everything in a fish shop.
Yeah.
And I think trying to create that environment to give people a place to go as a social side of things, as well as a spending side of things, that comes down to the shop to open their doors wide and be welcoming.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, people, they're not going to give two rats about you. They're not going to come down and buy the product they can just get through Amazon or the next day from whoever they're buying it from. So it's definitely, it's not the public needing to, not just the public needing to change their mentality. It's the shops. Some shops could do with certainly being warmer. Is they more inviting?
Yeah. You mentioned that it's a social side of things, and I totally agree with you. It's interesting because a lot of my customers, I am the only fish keeper that they know. Yeah. They don't know anyone. I actually try to introduce them to each other so they can talk to each other rather than me.
But and who else will they talk fish about?
Exactly.
Because they haven't got their friends. There's no family to talk to.
100%.
You.
So what I was going to ask you, why do more shops not have a social evening or something? Because I remember this was a long time ago. There was a shop that did it. It appeared to be big for the shop, but I don't know how much money they made that day, but they might have had 40, 50 people in this tiny cramped shop. And also what you notice is that people egg each other on, even if they don't know each other. They go, yeah, go on, treat yourself. So why do these things not happen so much anymore? Why are there not evening meets?
So if I look at my rugby store that Rory looks after, he's done quite a few meets and he has immense success with it. He's got a couple of customers that Tina in particular, who is just phenomenal. She'll come down with a giant canteen effectively. So she's got teas, coffees, bacon rolls. She's got handmade cakes. She's got a little bit of everything and it's all off her own back. We don't pay her to do this. She just loves Rory like a son and and supports them, and he has a fantastic time for it.
Yeah.
The reason I don't do it at Moss End is actually to do with me entirely and my incredibly annoying, incredibly busy children.
Yeah.
And I just don't have any time outside of work to put on a social event. I would love to. We used to do them before. Well, when the kids were little, I used to do them probably 2-3 times a year.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to go and chat and meet other reefers. Now my children are nearly 13, nearly 11, and they're either at netball or swim training or swim meets. They're just too busy. I just don't have evenings for myself anymore. Yeah. As they get older, I will definitely go back to doing the reef meets in the evening. I love them. I think they're really. When we see customers at them, it's no longer you work in the shop and I'm the customer. It's the social side of things. There's all the barriers get broken down and everybody just relaxes. And I love them. I think they're fantastic. Yeah. The more we have of them, the better.
So I met Alex at one.
All right. That's unlucky.
We met
we shouldn't hold them then.
Yeah. So I didn't go to the. I don't know if I've even ever been to one of your reef meets. But one of the things that people often say to me about either places like Aqua H or reef meets in the evening, those sorts of things, people don't know anybody, so they're going and they're like, oh, I don't know anybody. Can I come? So, and that must be though. Everybody must be. Bear in mind, I've not been there. Everybody must be in the same boat. I'm sure there are some people who know each other, but there must be people you go in and then within half an hour you're talking to everybody about everything, or is it everybody who comes knows each other, and how does it work? Is it a mix?
It's a big mixture. There's normally a core group of people that will all know each other from at least know each other off YouTube or off Facebook, or and then you've always got the customers that they're new customers. They don't know the names of the industry, shall we say. And it's then down to them. How friendly are they? How open? How do they even want to go and chat to people, or they just come for a free beer and a discount on a fish? You'd never know. I think where people most get to know people is local reefing groups. Yeah. So where they then hold, I don't know, an evening every 2 months at somebody's house, and it's just come around to my house. You can look at my tank. I'll chuck some pizzas in the oven, and we'll just have a little informal gathering. I think they're really important for people to do on a smaller scale.
I think that is that's the biggest thing that's missing in the industry. And I think if a shop can nail that down, where people look forward to going to it, even if it's once a month. Like I would go to one once a month. People have asked me to host them, but I don't want to host them because I just think it's slightly different. If it's in a shop, it's different because you have the public coming to your shop all the time, whereas I don't have the public coming to my house all the time. If you see what I mean. So
completely,
especially large quantities of them. But if there was a local shop that did it, I would go in the evening just because it's just nice to hang out and talk to people and about you. Everyone knows you. Everyone has one thing in common when you go to them.
Yeah.
So everyone's your mate. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And although I do talk quite a lot, I wouldn't say Alex will confirm this. I am not the most social person, but I actually do make an effort to go to these events because I enjoy them. So yeah.
Noted for next year. I shall try and organise one.
Interesting.
Well, if you're having one, I'll probably come. When I say probably come, I know you're about an hour and 45 minutes from me, but
No, you're not. Not an hour and 45
I think it is,
minutes
isn't
away. No, rubbish. No,
I don't know. I always come to your house first and then go there. So I actually never know the distance from your house.
It's like 20 minutes for me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well,
he is on a bike.
Yeah, that's very true. It's
true.
Hour 17 according to Google Maps.
Oh, so
there's your excuse gone.
There you go. Well, I'll be there.
Yeah.
So if you host one,
you might be closer to rugby.
I wouldn't be close to rugby.
Rugby.
No,
mine's down on the coast.
That way. Oh, okay. Completely wrong direction.
I'm down. I'm down near Horsham, like Brighton way. So
okay, no. Yeah, you're wrong way altogether.
Yeah. But look, I'll be there. Alex has just confirmed he's going to be there, and people in the chat, I'm sure, will come. So there you go. You pick a date.
Okay.
I'm just going to put pressure on you.
Right, leave it with me. I'll find a date somewhere in 2025 where I'm free one evening.
Yeah, exactly.
You would be surprised at what happens on these live streams where people put pressure on me. Like I only did the big show in Aqua, and I had the stand there. I only did that because it was mentioned on the live stream, and I was basically peer pressured into it.
You have to.
Yeah.
I'm now going to interject because we normally do the there's like a various things that we talk about, and there's like a structure, and that's gone out the window today because we got a very special guest, of course. But there's one thing I do want to do, and that's member questions, and there are a couple that are for you, and then some general ones as well. So I'm going to start with this one, which is from Surrey Reefer, who says, just a massive thank you to Ed. I remember 2 years ago walking into Moss End, intimidated about joining a brand new hobby. He took a good 45 minutes with me, talking about what I needed at the time, and gave me gave honest, really helpful advice. The team at Moss End are a credit to the hobby. So simple. Thank you from me for helping to make the hobby so enjoyable.
Ah, that's amazing. Thank you, man.
That's really nice. I
really
can't remember the guy's
appreciate
name.
that.
I've met him. I can't remember his name, but he's in the chat. So sorry, Reefer, if you next time you see him, Ed, say hello.
Yeah, gold star.
Yeah. Next one is from Edward, who says, anything still maddening in the hobby for you two? Mine right now is the color white either means STN or RTN or growth. Is there anything maddening? Is there anything really annoying you? What really annoys you? Ed, you don't have a tank anymore, do you? You've got the shop, basically. So, you're
maddening. It's still the naming of corals for me. That still just drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
I just can't. I get it with some. I get it with zoas because every single zoa looks different, and you can call that. I don't know, utter chaos, and I know what an utter chaos one is. But when we start naming, I mean, things like acans are starting to get silly names.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just like I can change the color of an acan quite easily depending on the lighting or the conditions or the nutrients or the shade levels.
Yeah.
I don't like the name of things. Gold torches, they really infuriate me. In fact, they actually, I feel my blood pressure going at gold torches.
Okay.
The brown corals we used to throw away because we couldn't sell.
Yeah.
Are now stupidly expensive because they've got 43 different names to them, and it's a gold torch. That maddens me.
Yeah.
There's about 3 torch names which I know, and other than that, I sell them all as just gold torches as well. Because I'm like you, I cannot be bothered to. People say, I remember I had one at Aqua, and it was like a quite bright one, and they're like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It is a gold torch," because
it's the same as the other gold torch.
Yeah. So like there are sometimes I find them useful because if someone's looking for a Dragon Soul torch, I know exactly what specific that they're looking for. But if it's any of the other ones other than that, I'm with you. I don't.
Yeah, that's why I've got 4 different torches at the shop. They're called Holy Grails.
Yes,
and
they're the worst ones.
Look up Holy Grail picture. All of them fit Holy Grails, but they're all 4 completely different. That I find that quite. It just goes against the grain a little bit.
So do you just call them gold torch, or do you have to go with the names because that's what people are looking for and that's what they want to see?
For us, we'll go to Holy Grail. Again, this is more Bruce's realm of expertise. If somebody, I don't understand the naming thing. I buy things, I either like it or I don't like it. I've got no issue with that. But I do know there's a large customer base that wants it because they're trying to collect all the different names. And I can't judge them for that. You've got people that sit on top of railway bridges all day long just so they can tick off they've seen every single train on that line or every engine of that class, whatever it is. I don't do train spotting. And I need to be aware that although I don't appreciate the naming, some of my customers do, and which is fine. There's no judgment there. We'll try and cater to that. But if we're in any dispute over what that is, it'll just be a gold torch, or just no name. Just there's a torch.
Torch.
If you view it as gold, wonderful. If you view it as brown, great.
I suppose to some extent you have to join in. Because
you do.
The wholesaler will have sold it to you at an inflated price because it's a special torch, which means you then have to sell it at a higher price, and you can't sell it at a higher price unless you add the name to it.
Exactly, it's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I totally agree. There are some things where it's zoas especially, although
Yeah.
they're the ones that drive me crazy because I don't know all the names. So I have to post a picture and go, what is this?
Yeah.
And then someone will tell me what it is. And sometimes I'll look at what they're telling me, or I'll get 5 or 6 different responses for the same picture with different names. So it's like, how do I list that? Because I don't want someone getting the wrong thing, if you see what I mean, even though there's a picture.
Yeah. Because some people are buying by the name.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they want the red people eater, not the Hawaiian people eater, or whatever it is. Yeah, and again, you can't judge them for that, but it can be infuriating.
That makes sense, particularly if you're buying online, because you can't always see. Like Ryan, your photos are generally pretty good, but a lot of places you'll go online on eBay. If someone's not spent a load of money on a camera and they're starting up or whatever, the photos aren't great, so you can't see what it is. So you need to be told: is this a utter chaos, or is it a rasta or a scrambled egg, for example? Because they look reasonably similar. So sometimes you do need that. But I think generally in the shops, you've started to name some of your corals, Ed, I've noticed, but it tends to be like purple favia.
Yeah.
Anything
Well,
else?
if you see any good names, that's normally Ellie. Because
really?
We've got a load of favias. Ellie's very creative with her name, so we just make up names.
There was a really nice pink gunny I bought, I don't know, a year or so ago when Barbie film was out in the cinema, and that got called Barbie Gunny. Was that?
Yeah, that was Bruce.
That was Bruce.
Yeah, it was 100% okay. Bruce.
A few more questions. A couple about fish. And actually, Ed, this might be perfect. You Springer's damsels.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts or experiences with them?
We use them in all of our coral trays. Okay. I think as far as the damsel family goes, they are as good as you get for a reef tank. Get them in a decent number, like, I don't know, if you can get them 10s upwards. They spread out. They're really good at eating flatworm, picking off pests. They bicker, but they don't have a huge hierarchy. You won't get one giant one forming and then little runts being picked off like you would do with other damsels. And they are beautiful. When you get them in the blue light, the electric blue comes through, they are really pretty fish. So yeah, 100% recommend. You might need to top up 1 or 2 now and again, but nothing too.
Okay.
They're not going to wipe each other out.
So I made the mistake. I bought one. I had a tank roughly the size of the cade over my shoulder, and I bought one because I was just like, let's just have something in there for pests. And then a couple of months later, I was like, one is ridiculous. I need to buy 2. So I bought 2 more. I thought, let's just have a small group. And that they were, obviously I don't know which ones were which, but there was always 1 over one side of the tank and 2 over the other. So there were clicks involved, and I didn't have a lid on that tank, which was stupid. But I got home one day, and one of them had jumped out, and the other 2 were best buds. So they didn't go down well. That, to be fair, if I had a cover on, maybe there just would have been a bit of bickering and it would have been okay. But they didn't like the new guys, or the new guys didn't like the old guy.
It's just pure numbers with those guys. So they're coming from shoals of thousands and thousands in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, when you see a field of them, there's not 3. There's loads of them. And so it's trying to get that number that's small enough that our tanks can handle the bioload. Or if you're going to go with 3, get all 3 at the same time.
Yeah, totally.
You've probably got a dominant one and then 2 ones that are terrified of the...
Yeah,
you're in my house now.
Yeah, exactly. Any tips on getting a newly bought Hawaiian yellow tang to eat nori sheets? He's in a 25-gallon quarantine tank. Right. No medication, just observing. No other fish in there. Ed,
okay, so first of all, I probably wouldn't go for the green nori. Go for the red if you can get it. TMC have it. I just find nori's a fantastic food for tanks. Great way of getting vitamins into them and a bit of green into them. It's so artificial compared to what they would graze on in the wild. It doesn't look like any food they've ever seen before. What I have found is if you feed them the red one, I don't know why, it seems to trigger a better feeding response to them. Okay. And then you can move them onto the green one later on. But also, rather than putting on clips on glass, getting elastic bands or cotton tight onto rock, cutting into smaller pieces, so it's more like it's an actual algae on a rock rather than a piece of salad floating in the tank. Trying to make it look more natural will hopefully get them onto it, but just patience normally. I've never seen a fish not take it long term. It's just, give it a little while just to get used to it.
Is it eating anything else is the question? Because if it's not,
good question.
Eat nori. Like if it can sustain itself on other things for a long period of time. In fact, some tangs I'm sure never get nori.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't.
It's I love these live streams because I learn stuff on them and I literally write stuff down. And so I've just written red algae is better than green algae. So I'm learning.
I didn't even
That's
know.
my
I mean, I'm
experience.
not. I'm not much of a tang guy, but I didn't even know red nori existed. I've never seen
Yeah.
it.
TMC do it as their
You
seaweed
sell
range.
it in your shop.
Yeah, red and green.
Okay. Interesting. What's the difference?
Different type of algae in it. One's red and one's green. They've got a different texture to them. When you feed them, they do feel differently, and it just seems to be that the fish go for the red quicker than they go for the green. That's what I've seen anyway.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I'll give that a crack. And the final question is that was from Gabriel's servant, by the way. The final question is from Bish Bash Ash, who says, "What do you think makes the hobby so addictive? Is hiding reef-related receipts from the other half the sign you've got a problem?" Yes, it is, but
yes. Maybe it's a problem with your other half though, rather than a problem with the hobby, because what makes it so addictive? It's the challenge. It's the every single day you don't know what's going to happen to your fish tank. You are running. If we look at a reef, you've got hundreds of miles of Australian reef, and you've got a huge ocean behind it sustaining it. And then we're going to take pieces of that reef and we're going to put it into a 200-litre glass box in our house in Berkshire. And we're going to try and make it grow as well as the Australian reef. That is a challenge. And there are so many things to create this ecosystem that runs well. And it's, for me anyway, it's finding those challenges and trying to work out what's going wrong or what's going right and how to replicate it. Half the time we don't know really what's happening in our tanks. We're trying to get rid of dinoflagellates and it's not working or it is working. And we'll try lots of different things. And it's I like the problem solving of the reef tank. For other people, it's very much the collection side. They want to have, I see a lovely picture of a Scully in the background, Alex.
Indeed.
Bruce was my number one customer years back because he collected Scullies. And I must have sold him, 25 Scullies over the years, and he was adamant he was going to have one of every single Scully. And that's what kind of drove him down the route of SBS. I've got Rory, who's just at rugby, who's just a massive biology geek, and he just sucks up information about anything aquatic. And he's just got a huge thirst of the actual science behind the hobby and the chemistry, the biology, the chemical treatments, the protozoas. He's driven by information, just quenching. As everybody's got a different reason why we love it. There's no correct answer there.
What was the reason that you loved it, or still love it?
I just really like fish. I like fish and corals. I like seeing them in a river. I like seeing them in the sea. I like seeing them in. I love anything underwater.
Yeah.
And I still have that love of it. I still see a singles or I see a pulsing xenia just pulsing. It's just phenomenal. I love it. It doesn't get boring to me.
Does it look? Did it lose its? I know you're going to say it doesn't get boring, but so when you see so many fish, are there some times when you go, they almost all feel the same to you? And are there times when something really, really special comes in and you go, wow, even after all these years, I've never seen that before?
This sounds, it sounds very cliche, but it doesn't get boring to me. I still, when I go into the shop and I see, we've got some Endler guppies. They're freshwater. They're like smaller guppies. And you look at them and you're like, that is a goddamn beautiful fish when you stare up close. Or you see a crebensis or that's in like full color. It's just, it doesn't, honestly, it just does not get boring to me. I find the whole thing fascinating. It hasn't tarnished in the slightest.
I've just Googled Endler guppy. We have very different opinions on what classifies as a prey fish.
Are you looking at males or females?
I don't know. Just the picture.
Look up male.
Okay. And I know what you mean. It's funny because I bought freshwater fish for the first time ever, basically, a couple of days. I bought some mollies to acclimate them to saltwater. And it was weird because I went in there, I was just like, none of these. It was a freshwater only shop, and I was like, I don't feel anything for any of these fish. Specifically, salt water that I'm interested in. Like there was nothing in there that I went, I'd love to keep that in a tank.
Yeah. Right, you're quite unique, really, that you haven't done the freshwater behind.
No, I've never done it.
The only person I know, do you know Malcolm, who used to work at Moss End?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And I mean, such a high-end guy when it comes to coral knowledge. But if you got served by him on a Saturday and you wanted to know which platies were male and which were female, which any newbie can do, he would have to call upon a weekender to help him out.
I can't tell.
He ignored all the fresh water, just had no interest in it.
I got 6 mollies. I have no idea if they're male or female. Literally. Right. I think the males have a big long fin at the top, but normally, other than that, I have no idea.
Do you think people need... So people often think they need to try freshwater first and then try saltwater. I did that. And actually, I think that was a waste of time. I don't. If you want to, you can just go straight into saltwater. Do you think that it's valuable or that it's a must?
I think you need to speak to the customer. Well, so most people will come in and they want to traditional is they want a pair of clownfish. And you need to engage with them for 10, 15 minutes to get a feel of, is it you want a pair of clownfish because you saw them in the film? Or do you actually find this world of marines quite fascinating and you've got the mentality where you need to learn a lot quite quickly. And before you get started, you need to do quite a lot of research here. And there's a financial investment. It's not... This is not a cheap thing to jump into, realistically. I'd say 95% of people we try and encourage to keep fresh water. The 5% that we help straight into the world of marines have normally done really well. There's been one or two that have proven us wrong when we've spoken about them as they've left the shop and they've gone straight into the world of marine. We're like, oh, they're going to really fail at this. This is not going to go well. And then the customer completely surprises you and like 6 years later, now is a 6-foot reef tank and has really run for it. Everybody's different, but the foundations of fish keeping in freshwater is so much easier to learn than going straight into the world of marine. It's a tricky balance. You just need to chat to everybody individually.
The one that I've seen some people set up, so I'm on Ultimate Reef and I see lots of people setting up tanks and all that sort of stuff. And every now and then someone will get their first ever tank, freshwater or saltwater. It'll be like a 5 or 6 foot tank.
Yeah.
And you see day one, they're setting up with all the radions and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, oh my God, you're spending so much money. And that's the one thing that makes me kind of a little bit kind of, I don't know about it. Ultimately, if you do what you want to do with your money, it's none of my business. But I often think the problem with that is if you're $5,000 into the hobby and then in 6 months' time, you've got it wrong and you've got algae everywhere and dinoflagellates, that's a hard hit to take. You should just be able to drop off and say, you know what, I've spent $1,000 on this hobby, but sod it, this isn't for me. But that's you could lose thousands if you spend.
You can lose a lot of money really quickly.
Yeah, totally. I feel like you need to take steps.
Yeah, and the last thing we want as an industry is people to bite off too much than they can chew and drop out the industry. We want them to stay in the industry for the long term. It's not a short term. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Yeah. It's interesting that it's more of from the point of view of, I always think of, do you need to do freshwater first before saltwater? I think of that in terms of a knowledge thing, but you're kind of thinking it more of a practical, are you cut out to keep fish? What do you actually want to get out of this? That sort of thing. It's kind of like a mindset almost.
Yeah, very much so. And also just things like, how do you start a siphon?
Yeah.
And this sounds really, but a lot of people think it's magic. Somehow I put a pipe in a tank and then it comes out the other end. And how? And it's just, as you say, if you get your first marine tank and you've got a load of equipment that you've never even heard of a protein skimmer before, and you're trying to balance a skimmer while trying to fix a light that doesn't have an on-off switch anymore because everything is bloody well driven by an app. It can be a lot to take on, as well as learning about ammonia and nitrite but RO water rather than tap. It's just, there's a lot to take. Let's say if you've got the right mentality, rock on.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask your opinion on something. So when we did the chat with Brian was saying about getting new people into the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, what needs to happen is Maidenhead need to do a campaign, basically, or just literally a sign will do, a poster will do that says marine fish, they're easier than you think.
Yeah.
Because there's this mentality that it's impossible. But are you of the opinion that that's actually a bad idea? Because people do need to, like, not necessarily fear it, but they need to respect it. So is that not the best thing to do?
I think the word respect it is the key.
Yeah.
So I was unfortunate enough to work in the industry when Finding Nemo came out. And that was we could have sold hundreds and thousands of fish tanks.
Yeah, yeah.
We could have sold countless clownfish. They wouldn't be alive today, and we wouldn't have any more reefers in the industry. We'd have a lot less of them in the industry.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put people off marines, but I want there to be a bit of a barrier. Whether that's a slight fear, whether it's a respect, whether it's a financial barrier, there needs to be a couple of steps that just make you think, should I be doing this?
Yeah.
That's the one thing, is that the people there are some people who will just be fascinated by like you, fascinated just by fish, even anything.
Yeah.
But there are some people who just want to have a box in the corner with some cool looking fish, and those, I think, if that's you, freshwater might not even be for you, but saltwater definitely isn't. Because
saltwater's not for you at that point.
I had a colleague at work who he completely neglected a freshwater tank. He got back from holiday, and I'm guessing he hadn't looked at his tank for 6 months, but the water was kind of halfway down because it had evaporated, and some of the fish had died and all this sort of stuff. But it was still just about doing okay, and there were some guppies still swimming around. But if that was a saltwater tank, within a week, never mind 6 months, everything would be on its last legs, or certainly within a month, you'd have lost everything. So I think if you've got no interest whatsoever, and you're just thinking, it'd be quite cool, then saltwater probably isn't for you. And there's some kind of level. I think that the barrier should be fairly low, but high enough to be, put off people. It's just because there are some people it just wouldn't be suited for, and they need some kind of barrier to stop them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But you don't want to have the barrier that high, because we need people to get on board with this.
And you don't want it to. Saltwater hobby sometimes gets accused of being a bit snobby, and you don't want that to be the case at all. You don't want it to be like, oh no, you're not good enough for saltwater, that sort of thing. So it's kind of I don't know where the barrier is, but just interesting to hear you talk about it. I've not thought about it that way before. So
yeah, no worries.
Brian, you look like you got more questions.
I have a question. It's the same question I asked Brian. It's changing the subject slightly, but I find it really interesting, this question, because anything can go wrong at any time with a marine tank. Now, if it goes wrong in a shop, it's serious, like serious. So I asked Brian, I said, what is the hardest thing the company has ever faced? And Brian basically said that during COVID, so I'm going to exclude COVID from this. You're not allowed, that's the easy cop out.
Easy get out.
Yeah. So Brian said that during COVID, obviously the planes weren't coming in. They had hardly any fish left, so that the bacteria, they couldn't sell the fish because the bacteria of the systems would get too low.
I remember it well.
So what was the hardest thing that you've ever faced?
I think the scariest thing we faced as a business was, I'm not allowed to say COVID, so I'm not going to say COVID, was the electricity price hike. That was absolutely terrifying. I mean, literally overnight, our electricity bill went up by £70,000 a year at Moss End. I mean, that's the same stuff coming out of the plugs, but I have to find an extra £70,000 a year to pay for it. Do
you mind if I ask how much it costs to run a shop? Because I think
electricity is about
everything. Like you're out. So if you exclude the cost of like the livestock, just the basics of running a shop, like when you're saying 70, that's more than I could have imagined it would be.
Yeah, I mean, a shop of Moss End size with staffing and your rate and your rents and whatnot, I don't know, pushing a good 300 grand.
Wow. So you have to make £300,000 before anything.
Yeah. And then somebody says, can you do that for £1 cheaper?
Yes. No. Do you get that where people come and ask for money off things? Because you don't get that in any. You wouldn't go into Tesco's and say, "Can I have that a pound cheaper?" But
so we have been known to say that to our customers before.
yeah,
They say if I buy two, how much? You're like, do you do this to Sainsbury's? If you buy 2 loaves, can I have it for £1.50 instead of 2?
yeah,
The aquatic industry is completely unique in its approach that everybody's entitled to the best price that anybody can. It's an unusual, we get asked all the time whether we say yes or no. It'll partly depend on what you're buying.
yeah.
But all I say is don't be worried about asking, but don't be offended if the answer is no.
Yeah.
Because we are a shop and we've got our overheads that we need to cover.
See, there was a Maidenhead in Crawley that I used to go to a long time ago, and the owner that was there is left now. But the owner had a very, very strict policy. There was no discounts for anyone. You only ask once, and then you never. And he didn't say in a bad way. He just went, "Look, we don't do discounts for anyone ever." And
this is the price.
This is the price, yeah. And I think that's what shops need to adopt. Because and you might disagree, because is someone going to go, I'm not going to buy that if it's £5 more expensive? You might say yes. I don't know the answer, but if I really want something, I will pay the price for it. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the right attitude. I mean, if you want to buy a single fish and that's the price,
yeah,
we didn't just make up a price. That's the price that we've worked out that we actually need to generate for that to cover the cost of selling the fish. You do get the odd customer that'll come in and say, like, you've got, I don't know, score a pinnace, wreck fish.
Yeah.
And they're on a deal for 5, and when you've got 40 in a tank, and they say, oh, we do a slightly better deal if you get 40. Then you're suddenly doing a bulk.
Yeah.
That's probably a slightly different environment. But the majority of the time, I think the price should be the price.
I agree. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
That actually when he said that to me, and I said this probably was 10 years ago, maybe longer. That was sort of like I sort of adopted that mentality pretty much, unless it was something like extortionately expensive. If it was something that was crazy expensive, then I might be cheeky. But generally speaking, I agree. If I want something, I'll buy it, whether they discount the price or not. Anyway.
But that's something that you and I have talked about a little bit recently, actually, that we kind of get numb to, the price of stuff in the hobby.
Yes.
And actually what I think you're more price sensitive. I was certainly, when I was new to the hobby, you're a lot more price sensitive because suddenly everything's new and you've gone from, I'd buy half a dozen neon tetras for 10 quid and suddenly I've got to buy a clownfish and it's costing me 40 quid. And so everything's really expensive and you're, oh my God, can I really spend 200 quid on a filter? And it takes you a little bit of time to get over the fact that actually everything, that's just what it is. And then when you get to the point where you're like, I don't care, I can make sacrifices elsewhere, that's when you start to get less price sensitive, I think. But I definitely, for the first year or two, for sure, it was always a little bit difficult for me. I'd go in, I see a coral for 50 quid and I think, oh, bloody hell, 50 quid for a coral.
Is it the newer people that would rather haggle then, do you find, or is it the experienced people?
The experienced by a long way. Yeah, I find the newer ones, because they're not, I guess they haven't got their confidence yet. They're not. Yeah. Because we've made a rod for our own back. Because everybody, like I said, the shops are a social scene. So I know more about my customers than I should know about my customers. And I mean that in a bad way, in many, many ways. And because you become friends, I don't know, sometimes people get a little bit cheeky at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, people who are new to the industry are normally very much, they're used to retail. You go into Tesco and that's the price of a can of beans. So that's how much you pay for a can of beans. It's a funny one. It doesn't happen as much as it used to be fair. It used to be almost every single customer. If I went back 15 years ago, it was almost like a car boot sale with bargaining left, right, and centre. But now, it's got better on that side of things.
I think because it's funny because I remember when like Achilles tangs, I think they were like £180 or £200. I was like, I will never buy a fish that expensive. And now I'm looking at one like, oh, £600. Yeah, that doesn't seem too bad or whatever.
It could be worse.
Yeah. it is weird where this hobby becomes almost an obsession, and you lose all sense of reality if you want.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So you've seen events like the like COVID and Finding Nemo as well that grow and shrink the hobby and that sort of stuff. And you said that it's kind of changed and things are different now. That feels like it's because it's bigger. Have you got a sense of, hobby goes in peaks and troughs and stuff. Have you got a sense of whether it's kind of growing long term, or does it just go up and down and levels off again?
It's always peaks and troughs with the marine trade, or the aquatics trade generally, but the marine trade is always, like, COVID was very much a peak. We're currently going through a bit of a, I don't know if it's a trough in terms of, there's no figure out there to say this is how many marine customers, how many marine keepers there are in the UK.
No.
But when the electricity prices all jumped up, there was a lot of people that dropped out of the hobby. There's a huge number who just went like, a panic station, what can we turn off? And
totally.
That fish tank that I've got a slight interest, it's not amazing. That's one thing that's going to go. The knock-on effect for us was that there was so much second-hand equipment kicking around that was so cheap.
Oh, right.
This was a positive and a negative. The negative was that we stopped selling anything with a plug on for quite a while because you could buy it for peanuts.
Yeah.
The positive, where people were dropping out of the industry because they couldn't justify the electricity, there were suddenly loads of people coming into the industry because they could pick up fish tanks really cheap.
True. Yeah.
So. Okay. What we lost with one, we kind of gained with the other. Our livestock sales started to soar. It's very hard to say because, again, going back to small shops or smaller systems closing down, and we're picking up their trade. Are we growing as a whole, or are we shrinking? I'm not. It's a bit of a guessing game for me because we're picking up where other people have dropped off a little bit. I think we're on a bit of a downward slope at the moment as a whole, the UK, but that will, given a bit of time, that'll slowly come back up again.
What triggers it, do you know, that comes to, like, what triggers a change? Is it literally just the economy because people have more money?
Yeah, it's normally something linked to the economy, some kind of, it can be to do with recessions, interest rates, it could be to do with the cost of the electricity was the big thing. But also just historically, it seems to go in trends. You tend to find that people will get a reef tank, they'll love it for 3 or 4 years. They might start getting a little bit bored of it and they shut it down. And we say, don't sell it, just stick it in your garage because we'll see you in 3 years' time when you get that itch again. Yeah. And they sell it. And then we see them in 3 years' time and they buy a whole new setup from us again, which is great for me. I've got no complaints about that. But I strongly encourage you, don't flog off your equipment cheap because you will be back. Yeah. And what triggers everybody to, not everyone, but a chunk of people to all at the same time, sometimes can just be a random, just a bit of shrinkage in the industry, but then it will pop back again. It always does.
Aside from sort of financial factors then, are there certain things that you see that cause people to pack it in, like dino flagellates or fish deaths, or is there a particular thing that people come in and they're like, do you know what, I'm done because of X?
Fish deaths would be a bit of a hard one to come back from. You probably won't leave the industry for it, but you might change the approach on the tank. So I don't know if you've got something nasty like velvet or brook in your tank and it's done some damage. I've been there myself. I've had it. Yeah, it can be really disheartening to go right, I'm going to get this tank empty for 3 months and I'm going to run it as a coral tank and then restock. So what a lot of people might choose to do is, right, I'm going to get rid of all the corals, I'm going to get rid of all of my invertebrates, I'm going to set up a nice fish-only system, but run some copper in the water. Or they just change, right, I've always done SPS, now's the time to cut back on the complications, let's get rid of all the cage keepers and the dosers, and let's just turn this into a softie tank. And softies right now are really fashionable. They're
really
flying out the door. Everyone's kind of taken a step back and gone, let's go for
easy
relatively
stuff.
Cheap. They're big. They can be colourful. And you find people change their approach on the tank. But yeah, fish death, that's always a sad one to see. They just haven't managed to get to the bottom of the root cause, or something like velvet's just taken hook and you can't. It's so hard to treat in tank.
Do you notice that when people do have that failing, if they don't leave, they usually come back better than they were before?
I certainly like to think so.
That's what happened with me.
Yeah,
So I
they
wonder if
either
that's a
come back.
consistent thing.
They either come back better or they come back short term,
Okay.
and they might end up doing something similar again.
Yeah.
And normally, if we've got a good relationship with somebody and we're actually chatting to them on a regular basis, we can help them learn from their mistakes, or learn from our mistakes, or learn from just whatever event happened.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll become a better fish keeper for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they'll leave after 3 months.
Yeah. Alex,
So there's a question from the chat, and John Wright says he thinks it's criminal that there's VAT on coral and fish. I was just trying to think, why wouldn't there be though?
I don't know why there wouldn't be.
Is there not, I was going to say, is there a pets or livestock or other things exempt? Or...
No, I mean, what don't you pay VAT on? You don't pay VAT on some foods.
Kids' clothes.
Kids' clothes, kids' shoes.
Yeah.
Currently private education. That'll change.
Okay. Yeah.
There's I don't know. Livestock isn't a necessity. I mean, there's no entitlement to owning a
no VAT on dogs.
No VAT on dogs. Would that not
dogfish?
be? I don't know. Didn't pay VAT on my cats, but they probably don't have the turnover to hit VAT requirements.
No,
you'd have to sell a lot of dogs.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah, you don't really sell dogs in shops. Well, you don't in America. They do, but here they don't do it at all. So they're usually from breeders.
It used to be able to years ago. You pretend that you're interested in a dog so you could play with a puppy.
It was a weird experience. It was a weird experience when I saw all these dogs in cages in America because it's so unnatural for us over here. You just don't see it. But
I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if you pay VAT on any animal. To be fair, can't answer that one.
Don't know.
Or if you don't pay VAT on animals.
Yeah, they're not exempt. Are there problems that you see recurring from customers? The same things over and over again, or things that come in waves and seem to come together? What problems do people have?
Impatience is probably our hardest one. Trying to tell people to slow down.
Yeah.
Not so much on the fish, but on the cleanup crew. Sorry, not so much on the corals, but the fish and the cleanup crew.
Really?
Controversially, I don't really mind how quickly you stock with some species of coral. I'm not talking about all corals, but some. You can get going fairly rapidly, and it brings in bacteria and brings in just the fauna of a reef tank. But it's when people are stocking too quickly with fish and the wrong fish go in too fast.
Yeah.
And you try and put the brakes on people. They either listen to you, they might go somewhere else, or they might speak to somebody else in the same shop. And yeah, impatience is a tricky one. Not fully understanding the concept that you're the water keeper, not the fish keeper.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all heard it before that you look after water and everything else looks after yourself, and not wanting to buy the correct equipment to monitor that. I'm not talking about KH keepers. I'm talking about
Salifert test kit.
yeah. It's minimal investment, so you actually know what's happening with your water.
Is that a regular thing where people still refuse to test their water? Is that like a?
It still definitely happens, or they test the wrong things.
Do you test people's water for them?
No. We will in the case of an emergency, or we need to double check something. But you've got, let's say, at the very cheapest level, you've got a £300 reef tank at home.
Yeah.
Real Fluval Evo with an upgraded light.
Yeah.
The minimum you can do is understand your water chemistry. You should be having all your own test kits. They're not expensive. They're not hard. They are the basic premise of a marine tank. And you should be testing that regularly and understanding your water chemistry before anything else is happening.
I'm really glad you said that.
Up and say, can you test my water? Is everything fine?
Yeah.
That's not going to help you on a Sunday night when we're shut. You need to know how this works. You need to know the very basics of your reef tank. So a few years back, I said to my guys, we're not testing anybody's water unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Or we're extremely quiet and it's a bit of a favor to double check or reference check something.
Yeah.
KH is always reading out, drop in some water. Bruce could do with 5 minutes behind the system hiding from everybody, so we'll go off and test it and reference it. Or my first fish keeper. So you've got your 40-litre tank and you've just set it up. We will test it for free at that point and show you how to use the test kit. But a marine customer, they should know how to do this.
It used to blow my mind that fish shops would do it for 50p a test, or I'm like, there is no way you're making money at 50p a test.
Madness! It takes hours.
I know.
Yeah, I've seen shops do it for 50p for a Hannah test kit. It's like that reagent has cost you more than 50p.
Yeah,
You're not just not making money; you're losing money.
Yeah,
and you're doing the customer. The customer should be doing this. It's their tank.
And if you get them doing it, you have another repeat sale because their test kits will expire or they will use them. Yeah. So.
So you talked about corals a minute ago, a question popped into my head. Do you have particular corals that sell particularly well, that you sell more than anything, and the same for fish and cleanup? Euphilia, really?
Euphilia.
What, hammers,
frog spawns, torches, anything that branches.
Yeah. Okay.
But Euphilia definitely the top one, and then after that, I'd say soft coral. Like if you want to break it down to LPS, SPS, softies will win overall. Mostly because of zoas, if nothing else. But
it's interesting. I do hardly any soft corals. It's almost like because they're more difficult to frag than like
they're a pain.
Yes, and they come off the frag plug. I know zoas don't, but mushrooms do. And
mushrooms are a nightmare.
Yes, and like toadstools, you have to stick them on. They don't look like a toadstool for months and months and months.
Yeah,
it just looks like a little blob sticking. So I basically just don't do them, pretty much, other than a few zoas. And I've just realized that like you've basically gone. That's like the biggest part of the market.
Well, for us, it's a big part at the moment.
Yeah.
But then we don't do fragging toadstools really. We've got one really nice green one in the display tank. Yeah. Paul will take slices off that every few months, but it's just it's a lot of hassle.
Yeah.
For not a lot of reward.
I totally agree, and I don't usually ship big colonies as well. And normally soft corals are bigger colonies, aren't they?
Yeah. It's expensive to ship. There's heavy box.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is they don't always look so. They're less uniform with regards to a torch coral looks like a torch coral.
Yeah.
So, or a hammer looks like a hammer. But if I get some soft corals in, they're less uniform with regards to the pictures, which means there's more effort with regards to updating the website for them as well.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah. So that's the luxury of not the luxury, but I've always thought this. There's a difference between an online seller and a shop. Is that when someone comes into a shop, they see exactly what they're getting. Mm-hmm. They buy exactly what they're getting, and they cannot possibly be annoyed by what they get because they picked it themselves.
Yeah.
So if they buy something online and it's a slightly different color or something like that, and you do your best to make sure you put the best pictures up, but corals look different under different people's tanks, don't they? Different lighting.
We've got 8 coral trays at both shops. Yeah. Me and Rory recently moved around a load of corals at Rugby, and we had some Favias. We've had those Favias for about 6 months.
Yeah,
they got moved from one lighting to another lighting. I'm not going to talk brands. Rory texted me like 2 days later going, "There's every single Favia we moved is now sold."
Yeah,
just
was that blue light to white light, or literally just
no?
different?
Everything's pretty blue sided anyway. We've got so much white light with all the fish systems. Yeah. We actually have to run really hard blues to make it look slightly blue. We've got too much white. When you see the coral trays with the shop lights off, they look phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay.
But just when it's in daylight, we need to be quite harsh on the blues. But it's just a different brand. It was just like moving from these aren't the brands, but say moving from a AI blade to a Hydra.
Yeah.
And it just looked different. So if you're selling corals online, that must be an absolute headache because 100% that coral is going to look different in your tank than 100%. It does in my tank with my camera lens.
Yeah, occasionally people will even pick them up from here, and then they'll take them home. They go, "What are your settings? They look so much different in your tank than they do in mine." But again, the difference is they're in like this much water, and you can see them closely, whereas they usually will put them far back.
Yeah. You're looking top down on a coral rather than sideways.
In the bottom trays, yes, that makes an absolutely massive difference.
100%.
I have corals which I would sell all the time in the bottom tray. I move them to the top. I don't sell any of them anymore. And occasionally I'll move one down to the bottom, and then it will go straight away.
Yeah.
It's really funny that like talking to someone that does exactly what I do, and you notice the same things.
Yeah. It's the same patterns throughout the whole industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a cup of tea arriving.
Hey,
it's my beautiful assistant Evie as she's sneaking away. Babes.
You started to do some online coral sales a little while ago.
Yeah, we did.
What happened with that, and would you bring it back?
I would if I had the space to dedicate to it.
Okay.
What we wanted to do was very much what you see is what you get, and it was trying to do the balance between so Alex, you come to the shop and you want to buy a coral. I'm not going to say you can't have that because it's on our online site.
Yeah.
So that's fine. You can buy that coral, but then I need to remember to take it off our online site. And it's a Saturday afternoon, and you've seen how busy the shop gets. Things go wrong very quickly, and we didn't want to ever look like we wanted to be as accurate as possible with what we're selling. And it just didn't seem feasible. It didn't seem worth the amount. It's a massive amount of work. Bagging up corals, putting them into boxes with heat packs, and then going to the post office.
Yep.
Is a lot of work.
Sometimes I think people think I appreciate so much you just said that, because sometimes I think people think I don't do anything.
No, it's just the post office alone. Forget the bagging of the coral. The post office is horrible.
Yeah.
And I don't like going there.
I'm the person who makes the massive queue. Imagine how that feels as well when people are behind you, like tutting.
I'm really sorry. It's
It's the only thing I will say, and if you do want to go back into it ever, people don't expect what you see as what you get as much as they used to anymore. And and a frog spawn, as far as I'm concerned, is like, if it's the same variation of that frog spawn, and I've got 10 of them, I don't care if people are buying them, and they're, because usually you can keep a rough, as long as you haven't got one of them left, and then that one gets sold. But usually, I'm assuming you will have multiples of types of coral. And the other thing I wanted to do, I thought, if I'm going to keep getting or keep like growing like Hystrix, for example, I'm not going to take a picture every time I grow a Hystrix to sell it like for 12 quid or whatever it is, because a Hystrix is a Hystrix. They all look roughly the same.
Yeah.
But do you know what the difference is? So when I go into Reefkeeper, you've normally got 10 of the same coral in a row. And I try to, if I want that coral, I try just to you pick one. I don't care. It really doesn't matter which one you get. But because there's 10 types, you find yourself going, oh, which one's got slightly more color in it, or which one's spaced out more. Whereas if you just had if you just had one there, I'd be like, I just have that one. And then if you went out the back and got another one, no one would care. So it's like when you don't see that there's a difference, you don't care. And actually, it's better in a way, because when you go, you end up spending time going, oh, no, not that one, the third one back and just left a bit. Like, it really doesn't matter, but you get sucked into doing it. So I bet actually because Ryan, you always, I think photography would be a pain as much as anything, because the amount of time you'd spend taking photos all the time. Whereas you take one photo when it's spaced out and representative, and then they all look the same, so you get one of them.
Yeah, the coral will either be basically the coral will either be that coral or better. If I'm not happy with it, or I think it's like, even if it's slightly damaged or whatever, I'll send a message to the customer and go, look, this got stung by something. I wouldn't be happy with it. I'm not going to send it to you, because I was going to
ask, do people ever complain about like getting this? I didn't think it was that big or small or whatever. Or
no, very occasionally I'll get something where someone will say it's a different color. Very, very occasionally. But to be honest, I don't actually. I think the difference is most people know me through the YouTube channel, so people feel like they're buying from someone that they know, and it's almost like they don't want to be an inconvenience. And I don't like. I have a policy where no one ever leaves unhappy ever. Like, I would rather not have their money and have their future custom, if you see what I mean, than not have it. Then go, no, actually, no, you're wrong. I'm keeping your money. Things usually work pretty well. There are occasional circumstances where customers will take an advantage of that, but then I also get to choose whether I work with that person going forward as well, if you see what I mean. So, but it's very
Ryan's
rare.
got a blacklist.
Yeah, you're on it. So
I know.
it's very rare, to be honest. And more often than not, people say, like, I bought one Zara and I got 3. And that purely comes down to the fact that, like, I fragged that 3 weeks ago and it's grown 2 extra heads in that time. And I'm not going to go and frag another piece so I can sell one piece. It's not worth that, like, for me.
Not worth the time.
Yeah.
That's actually so. One of Ryan's problems is corals grow too fast. Proper first world problem. But you guys must have that as well, because Ryan can if a coral grows too fast, you can frag it into 4 more pieces and so. But you guys must have, when you set frags out in the trays and they grow and they base out. Does that start to become a real issue for you if they're not selling straight away? And
yeah, it can do. It depends on the coral.
Okay.
I mean, you've got some of the chalices, some of the zoas, and you go to sell them and you realize you've completely encrusted onto the egg crate, and it's like, and you end up, you don't want to, if they've been there long enough for them to grow to a problem point, you really don't want to be fragging them. I mean, if I've got 15 chalice and they've grown to 3 times the size, I don't want to turn them into 45 chalices, because now I've got 45 chalices. It's better to maybe knock some money off them, put them in some kind of a bundle deal. Is really at that point you think, I need to move these corals on. They are, with the number of people we've got coming through the doors, and I haven't shifted them, they're obviously not a popular coral. So they are a problem, but a different kind of problem.
Yeah. Ryan, so I've exhausted my list of questions. Was other stuff? We've got 10 minutes, by the way. So was there anything else that you wanted to get in that you were particularly keen on?
Very cool. Let me have a quick look. Anything? I was interested if there's anything you won't bring into the shop.
Again, definitely.
So what? So you must have your own blacklist yourself.
Yeah, it's a very informal thing done between me, Rory, and Bruce on our own experiences of livestock. So, ignoring like TMC's blacklist, where they've got corallivores on there, they're not going to sell you a blacktip reef shark unless they know exactly where it's going. Still get you one, but you have to prove where it's going. There's a few fish that we just go, we are not touching these fish, and there's a lot of the wrasse family. So think like Femininus, Lenardis. I can't get them anymore, but Redtail, Nampsies. They're just too sensitive. Where you go, you may keep them alive for 3 months, you may keep them alive for 2 days, but the success rate is so minimal that if you want to try it, great, but you're not buying it from me. You can buy it from whoever.
I suppose
ribbon eels.
There is a huge risk for you, because obviously not everything, but the majority of your shop is living. Which means if you get something in for someone, especially if it's expensive as well, if you don't sell that quickly enough, that then becomes your burden if it doesn't survive. Yeah,
very much so.
And that, I think, is also the difference between a successful shop and a shop that doesn't do well. Because I think it was Brian who said a dead fish is the most costly fish, or something like that. He said it's like the most expensive fish is a dead one. And that must apply, because when I actually asked you this when I met you in the shop once, like you have thousands and thousands of fish, so you must be doing a really, really good job with regards to the husbandry of them to keep them all going.
I'm not doing a good job.
Of course,
my guys are doing a very good job. There's some of the people like Michael, Darren, and all they do is they feed and they clean and they maintain and and serve customers as well. But they are so dedicated to the healthy animals, and that is vital to us. You're keeping small fish in a glass box, and they've got no grazing, they've got very little hiding. The more we feed and the more we treat, the better. So we do not want unhealthy fish at that point.
Bruce says, ask Ed about Moorish idols.
No, Bruce can go swing for one.
You're not a fan of Moorish idols?
No, I didn't used to be. Bruce has proven me wrong with a little bit of luck and optimism. So Moorish idols were very much... They were on my blacklist.
Okay.
I love Moorish idols, but they were impossible to keep.
I don't get it.
You'd have the odd person to keep one for like a year or two, and everyone would aspire, but there'd be, I don't know, say 100 Moorish idols coming out of the sea, so one person could keep one for a year or two.
Yeah,
that is unacceptable. Now Moorish idols, they're coming through. They're coming through big. They're coming through fat. They're feeding on everything, and we're having amazing success. I think I told Bruce one day, if you ever come back with a Moorish idol, he will be fired. And then he came back with a Moorish idol, And he was so close to it was almost my get out of jail free card with Bruce.
Yeah.
And then he proved me wrong. And things changed. The collection area will have changed. The collection technique may have changed. The depth of water they come from. I don't know what's changed, but they have become far easier than they used to be. They're not easy. They're still specialists, but they're far easier.
Still eat corals.
Yeah, they still.
Yeah,
as you know,
one.
I think I've got one of your more swimming around in my shop at the moment.
You've still got it? Oh, really?
I'm not sure. Actually, I think it may have been sold.
I had a couple of people tell me that they bought a Moorish idol from Moss End, and they've asked me if it was mine. And I don't know it knowing, but
this is definitely a question for Bruce.
Yeah.
There you go.
If you're listening, Bruce, have we still got Alex's Moorish?
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is one thing. So Ryan, one of the features we do is Ryan does a fish of the week and a coral of the week, and we've just been asked for your fish of the week. Have you got like it's sold by the way. So it's just like a fish that you want to. It can be either a fish you really like or something that's unusual that you don't see. Just a fish.
So
that you think people
if you
need to
ask
know
me every single day, I'll give you a different answer on fish of the week.
Okay.
My all-time
I need to
favorite
start
fish of the
calling
week-
you.
So, yeah, call me up. Keep changing. Endless guppies? No, not really. Wrought iron butterfly. I absolutely love wrought iron butterflies. I think they're superb.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one. Your shop is known for getting in very high end. I know they get all fish in, but you can source very high end fish if you want things like that. You don't see them every day, do you?
No, I think we've had at least two. Two. And they're such pretty fish, but they are hideously expensive now compared to what they were, and they were hideously expensive back then.
Yeah,
I think the last one we had was £3,499.
The last
people with too much money.
Last one you had, and this is an interruptus. I got a video of. I remember I was really excited because you'd got one in, and it'll go out in a sec. But this was the last one you had. This was a few years ago.
Yeah, interruptus stunning. There he is.
That's a cool fish.
They don't do it for me.
Look at that.
They don't do it for you. No, not even remotely.
You've got no taste. No taste at all, Ryan.
You couldn't give me that fish. That's what's funny. It's interesting because everyone feels so differently about things. Mm-hmm. Alex and I have totally opposite tastes with regards to fish.
It's true.
But again, you love that fish. A quick question: do you love it because it's rare and you don't see it very often, or do you love it because it's like, why do you love it? Because it's not the prettiest fish.
It's the scale patterns on it. Why do you look like that? Why do you actually look like you're wearing chainmail? What in biology has created that particular pattern? I don't know. Something that floats my boat for it.
I look at it and go, that looks like a grey fish to me. And I actually can't think of another grey fish that I know. Obviously, there's loads of grey fish.
Half the tangs you like are grey or brown or beige.
They're not.
Yeah, they are.
I suppose there are some grey fish, but like that's a very grey fish. But
it's a very grey fish. But then the Achilles tang is a very plain black fish.
That's literally what was said. So I didn't put out a video today with someone, and he said to me, and it was about expensive fish. He said, I really want an Achilles tang. I said, why? He said, I don't know, because it's rare and no one else has them. And I said, name me a prettier fish. He went, Royal Grammar. I went, so afterwards, I said, like off the camera, I was like, go get one of those. They're cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly talking in like double figures. Royal Grammar's a stunning little fish.
I know, but you could probably get 10 more than that. I think I don't know how much Royal Grammars are these days, but you could probably get 10 of them as opposed, and they're less likely to die. I know a touchy subject.
Yeah, they're more likely to wipe out your tank if you come to me though. So.
Oh really? With a Royal Grammar?
No, it was unlucky really. I should have quarantined it to be fair, but I bought a Royal Grammar, and that's what I got. That's what got me white spot on my tank, and everything's now dead. Well, most of it.
How's the Royal Grammar?
Oh, long gone. It died within a week. It was weird. As soon as I put it in, it looked fine. As soon as I put it in, it was just out in the corner hiding, and I was like, first day, no problem. Second day, same there. I thought, that's weird. Didn't come out when I fed. And within a week, he was still there, just not doing anything. I was like, this is weird. Not coming out to feed at all, just staying in the same place the whole time. And then a couple of days later, white spot. A couple of days after that, he was gone. But it's just unlucky. It's not particularly because of them. It's just, it happens, doesn't it? So
yeah, it could be any fish, really.
Yeah, exactly. Ryan,
yes,
you've got 1 minute 55 seconds. Have you got anything else you want to go for?
Not really. I was just very quickly, and this is not. You said at the very beginning, off stream, you don't keep discus. I was just intrigued why you keep everything, but why discus? No.
You only need the number of discus keepers is quite limited, and to do discus well, you've got to be a specialist in it.
Okay.
And we've got a discus shop, the Maiden Aquatics Ascot. They sell discus, and they do a fantastic job at it. They're 15 minutes away. There is no point in me selling discus. We'd just be splitting the customers in half.
Yeah.
Just leave it to them.
That is it. I have no more questions.
Perfect. Well, Ed, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've covered everything. Thank you, guys.
I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's been good fun.
I really enjoyed this. So
yeah,
I've definitely appreciated the top up of drinks coming through the door off to one side secretly.
Yeah.
No, loved it. Thank you for chatting.
Yeah, thanks for joining, and yeah, it's been really good fun having you on. And everybody, thank you for watching.
There's just one thing I just want to say, just very quickly, and it's so basically, I can't ship corals after. So my last shipping day of the year is going to be Wednesday, which is the 18th of December. So it becomes too risky.
From the 19th onwards, you need to go to Reefkeeper Moss End.
Basically, yes.
And you'll see Alex there.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'll be something to do, so you never know. You might see me there.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to see you down there.
So
good stuff.
that's it.
All right. Cheers, guys. Catch you later.
Awesome.
See you later.
Cheers.